What if I told you you didn't have to watch 3, 4, 5, or even 6 stocks a day to become a profitable trader? In fact, in reality, all you need to do is watch 2, and those stocks are going to be SPY and QQQ. So in today's video, I'm going to be explaining how I personally trade SPY and QQQ, what I look for, and what kind of setups I like to trade on these two names. And also I'm going to be explaining why it's important to watch the ES futures as well as the NQ futures when trading SPY and QQQ. But real quick, before hopping into the video, as always, if you guys do find value in this video, make sure to smash that like button, and also make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel for access to over 800 plus free videos, especially for the 50% of people that are not subscribed to the channel. But without further ado, let's hop into it. So for me personally, around like 90% of my trades are actually on SPY and QQQ. Now, real quick, if you're not too familiar with what SPY and QQQ are, SPY is basically just the top 500 stocks, and QQQ is going to be the top 100 stocks, mainly made up of tech. However, there are some individual names like Starbucks in it. But when you think about QQQ, you want to think about tech stocks. So Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, AMD, etc., etc. So when looking at SPY, this is just going to give you an understanding of the overall market. So if somebody walked up to you on the streets and was like, how's the stock market doing today? You're more than likely going to look at SPY and you're going to base your answer off of that. Or if somebody's asking, how's the tech sector doing today? You're more than likely going to pull up QQQ and you're going to base your answer off of that, right? So heading on over to SPY, I want to break down how I start every single morning to get an understanding of the overall market. So the very first thing I do actually is I start with my analysis on the futures, the S&P 500 futures and the NASDAQ futures. So why is doing your analysis on the futures important? The reason being, SPY and QQQ, yes, they trade in the post-market and the pre-market, but if we actually break it down to a 5-minute time frame real quick, you can see that the moves that they make, just the candlesticks themselves, they're very thin, right? So yes, they trade in the overnight session and the pre-market session. However, if we pull up the S&P 500 futures, which actually trades 23 hours a day, and we were to look in the overnight session, you can see that the candlesticks, they have more, I would say, length to them. That's the best way that I would explain it, or more liquidity inside of these candlesticks. So they're making actual moves compared to SPY, which again, these candlesticks, they're very thin, right? So that's why it's important to do your analysis on the futures, because sometimes, or actually a majority of the time, you're going to see a different level on the futures than what you would see on SPY or QQQ. Now, as traders, we don't know if price is going to react off of a SPY level, or we don't know if it's going to react off of an ES level. If they're at the same exact level, then yes, that's going to be double confirmation, but we don't know until price reaches that level and we look for the confirmation. So that's why it's important to look at the ES futures when doing your analysis. There's been so many scenarios where we'll have a 50% fib on ES and we're coming down to it, but SPY is nowhere near the 50% fib. And then ES will bounce off of the 50% Fibonacci retracement, taking SPY with it. And for those who aren't familiar with the S&P 500 futures and SPY, they move in sync, right? So if we were to just pull up a 5-minute time frame of the ES futures right now, look at the price action, and then if we head on over to SPY real quick, you see it's the same exact thing. So they move in sync. Again, the S&P is going to be your S&P 500 futures. So always start off doing my analysis on ES in the morning. Typically, I will start on a daily time frame just to understand where we're at from an overall higher time frame perspective. And personally, for me, when doing supply and demand, I have a bunch of videos on how to identify supply and demand levels. I only do them on the futures. I don't like doing them on SPY or QQQ. So you can see right now on the daily time frame for the ES futures, I actually do have a daily demand point right here that I would be interested in trying to go long if price came down. Same thing on the 4-hour. We had a 4-hour demand right here. Price got very close and then bounced. So if price came down into this area, I would be interested in a bounce. But because I don't do supply and demand on SPY or QQQ, I'm not going to have that level. The reason being, if we look at the daily time frame on SPY, there's no daily demand down here at all. You can see that 4-hour demand, but you're not going to be able to see that daily. And that's because, again, the S&P futures trade 23 hours a day, while SPY and QQQ only trade from 9:30 to 4 p.m. Eastern time, plus the overnight and pre-market sessions. But again, very thin liquidity. So once I'm done on my daily time frame on ES, I'll then break it down to a 4-hour time frame and start looking for any other levels, resistance, supply zones, even Fibonacci retracements. Currently, the market we're in, we really don't have too many Fibonacci retracements. And then after that, I will look at a 1 hour time frame. So that's personally how I identify all of my levels. And again, I'm using a mixture of supply and demand, support and resistance, and Fibonacci retracements. It just depends where we're trading at that time. Sometimes there will be no supply and demand, but there will be tons of fibs. If that were the case, then I would rely on fibs. Right now, the market we're in, we have no clear-cut pivot high, pivot lows that we can use for fibs. So until then, I got to rely on something else, which right now is going to be supply and demand, or just basic support and resistance. So once I'm done doing all of my ES levels, I'll then head on over to SPY. And again, sometimes SPY is going to give you a different level than what ES is going to. And sometimes price might react off of the SPY level, or sometimes price might react off of the ES level. And our jobs as traders is to watch price action as it comes to those levels and look for confirmation to either go long or go short. So again, I'll start on a daily, break it down to a 4 hour, break it down to a 1 hour, find all my levels of interest, and then I'm ready for the day as far as SPY. So once I'm done with that, I'll then head on over to the NASDAQ futures. Again, mark supply and demand levels, Fibonacci, support and resistance. Looking at NQ, we did have 4 hour demand right here. Price came down, bounced right out of it. Again, because I don't do supply and demand on QQQ, you might have been able to see the level. Yeah, you can see the level on QQQ, but again, because I personally don't do it on there, it wouldn't have been marked. But now here's another thing when looking at the NQ futures is if we actually go to the weekly time frame, we actually have weekly supply right here at 16,304. If we head on over to QQQ on the weekly, we actually don't have supply up there. In order for it to be supply, it had to be a green candle. We don't have a green candle right here. So therefore, technically, NQ has the supply, and this is the level that we should be watching. So again, that's why it's important to watch both the futures as well as SPY and QQQ. Now, as far as intraday, just because SPY and QQQ, they trade differently in the pre-market and post-market session. When it comes to moving averages or VWAP, personally, when I'm day trading, I like to use the 8 EMA, 21 EMA, and VWAP. Sometimes these are going to be in completely different areas. There's been plenty of times where SPY would break below VWAP and I'm looking to go long. However, ES is bouncing off of VWAP. And because of that, I would use that as a long entry with a stop loss below ES VWAP. So I would be trading SPY options, but basing the trade off of the ES technical analysis. So if I were to be trading QQQ, I would use this screen over here. I have 4 different monitors. I would have QQQ in the middle on multiple different time frames, but then I would have NQ pulled up over here. That way I can see the moving averages. If there's a different level on NQ that we don't have on QQQ, I'm able to see that, and I can manage that QQQ trade while also watching the NASDAQ futures. Again, if you're ignoring the futures when trading SPY or QQQ, trust me when I say this, you are going to be missing out on critical levels that could make the difference between a winning trade and a losing trade. But that is going to wrap up this video. So as always, if you guys did find value in this video, make sure to smash that like button as well as clicking that subscribe and that bell icon. It would mean the absolute world to me. And also, if you have any video suggestions that you would like to see from me going forward, make sure to drop them down in the comments. And if you haven't already, make sure to check out my new book, The New Age of Day Trading, the Ultimate A through Z Trading Guide. Goes through my entire day trading strategy. I can almost guarantee you that this book is going to answer every single question you have about my strategy. So again, The New Age of Day Trading, the Ultimate A through Z Trading Guide on Amazon. The link will be down in the description. Other than that, everybody have an amazing rest of your day. And I'll see you guys in the next video.